You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast.
We are actually a pioneering company that created a subsector for healthy snacks that didn't exist prior. I had to start with the market. I had to build demand for this product. I had to ensure that Nigerians liked it. That is probably the biggest challenge. Can you get your raw material at a stable price and at a reasonable enough quality so that you can meet consumers' high needs? We do a lot of farmer intervention training and the like through donor capital because we're fortunate enough to be able to raise some. All in all, there's nobody anywhere in the world that has tasted our products and didn't think it was world class.
Stay tuned as we bring you inspiring people who are unlocking Africa's economic potential. You're listening to the Unlocking Africa podcast with your host, Tessa Adamu.
Welcome to the Unlocking Africa podcast, where we find inspirational people who are doing inspirational things to unlock Africa's economic potential. Today, we have another special guest, Affiong Williams, who is founder and CEO of ReelFruit and is on a mission to unlock the value in Nigeria's fruit value chain by building an end-to-end fruit processing company. Welcome to the podcast, Affiong. How are you?
Hi, thank you very much for having me here, Tessa. I'm doing very well.
Fantastic. How's your day been so far?
Oh, everything's going well. I can't complain.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining us on the podcast. It's great to have you here. I'm not sure if you've listened before. I like to start from the beginning. So introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Affiong Williams.
My name is Affiong, Affi for short. I am an entrepreneur from Nigeria. I run a company called ReelFruit. I've been running that company now for 11 years. I am a wife, a mother, an athlete. I run marathons particularly.
Oh, wow.
Competitively. And I'm a lover of sports and just being active and somewhat challenging myself through all my professional and recreational pursuits. So I am kind of a very tough, gritty person who really likes to do hard things, I think, in summary. That's me in a nutshell.
It sounds like it. So you've given us great insight into who you are, entrepreneur, mother, wife. You've been running the company for 11 years and you've run 20 marathons?
More, yes.
More? Oh, wow. Yeah. As I said in the introduction, and you mentioned as well, you're the founder and CEO of ReelFruit. So I was hoping you could tell us a bit more about the company, what you do and what you hope to achieve.
Sure. So ReelFruit is the largest dried fruit processing based in Nigeria. I started the company, like I mentioned, 11 years ago to introduce a new snack into the Nigerian market. So we are actually a pioneering company that created a subsector for healthy snacks that didn't exist prior. So when I first started the company, obviously I would get questions like, why should I eat dried fruit? People did not understand the product and what it entailed. And I literally spent, the better part of a decade really introducing the product to customers, changing their ideas about a quality range of healthy snacks. Now, beyond all of this was really my real goal, which was not particularly focused on just launching dried fruit, but more importantly, being a large-scale manufacturing company based in Nigeria and working in the fruit value chain to really exploit all the opportunity within that value chain and especially around impact. So when I tell people the reason I started my company, it's not because I love dried fruits. It was more because I felt that there was an unemployment crisis and agribusiness and value-added manufacturing was a real potent way to actually, make a dent in that. And so I went about doing it and really trying to build a large scalable business that hopefully will not just now create huge potential, not just for myself, investors and co in the fruit value chain, but also unlock the potential of that value chain and do a lot of good while doing that for our key stakeholders, including customers, employees, the jobs we create, our farmers that we buy from and the like. So I'm really on a mission to build an end-to-end impactful, profitable and scalable business.
Amazing. So you mentioned there you're the largest dry fruit company in Nigeria, pioneering company and the reasons why you started a company. So you've produced a product that doesn't or didn't exist in Nigeria previously. So I was hoping you could talk us through, I guess, the early days and some of the innovation that was required to start and establish the business.
Absolutely. The early days were no doubt the toughest of this journey. And really, I started with an idea, that if I brought a new product into the market, that knowing Nigerians, we like to try a lot of new things. We're not really shy about attempting new things, going new places. So I had a feeling that Nigerians would at least try it. I didn't have any guarantees about whether they would like it. So what I realized was that I really had to get it in the hands of a lot of Nigerians consuming it and eating the product. And that kind of really flipped my business model, or at least the assumptions that I would have about my business model in the beginning, because I assumed that I would come and be, start with the factory and then produce the product and work with the farmers and then start attacking the market end. But it actually worked out the other way around, where I had to start with the market. I had to build demand for this product. I had to ensure that Nigerians liked it first before I, invested a lot of time and money into, building a factory, especially a factory to the scale that we eventually would need, and even being able to solve problems around farming issues and raw material issues. So I would say the first innovation around the business came around actually innovating on the business model and really being lean and focusing on getting a product to market, building a brand from the early days, and in fact, even down to my packaging. At the time when I launched my product, the packaging changed. We rebranded our product about 3 years ago. But at the beginning, the criteria for my packaging was literally make the product look imported. Like I didn't want people, not that I didn't want people to know that it was Nigerian, but I wanted the packaging material to be so good that people thought or assumed it was a foreign product, because that obviously came with a lot more trust, right? Yes. So, and also I ensured that the packaging was very loud because I wanted it to like jump at people on the shelves. So our first colors were like these bright reddish orange and bright yellow for mango and pineapple. And you could not spot it in the stores. So even around our packaging and the first iteration of the brand, it was really innovative to kind of grab attention, make people curious, and give the impression that this was like a more established company and more established product, which it was outside of Nigeria, but in Nigeria it was very new. And I think those decisions in the early days really set us apart and kind of put us on the path to being able to really build demand, build the market first, and then kind of backward integrate into production, into processing, and now into, sort of the farming and value chain work that we're doing.
Awesome. ReelFruit is on a mission to unlock the value in Nigeria's value chain. So what have been some of the challenges that you've encountered with regards to this mission of unlocking Nigeria's fruit value chain?
I think there have been so many challenges, but the biggest one that most businesses in the agribusiness sector or value-added sector face is that, can you get enough quality raw material at a reliable price year-round to process? Because if you can't do that, then your unit costs become high and you don't have product and you can't determine prices and all of that stuff. So the challenge around quality raw material is one that we knew was going to become a problem. And we started making inroads in even years before we had our factory. So in the beginning, I remember as far back as 2016, even like 6-7 years before we raised money, we would go to the northern part of Nigeria to try and map where mango farmers were, how many trees were on each farm. We would try and get contacts because there was just no data online or even anywhere reliable. All the estimates we got just did not square up with what we were seeing in the field. But we made it our mission. We spent and invested our time and money to kind of start securing and getting accurate data around our value chain, just to know what to plan for and what risks that we would need to mitigate against. So that is probably the biggest challenge. Can you get your raw material at a stable price and at a reasonable and enough quality so that you can meet consumers' high needs? And that's something that continues to prove to be a problem, but we definitely have a very proactive approach to solving that. We've done a lot of work training farmers. We've done a lot of work running experiments on farms to increase productivity. So we are solving that problem actively, but as we scale, we need to be sure that there's enough raw material to continue to feed our growing needs. And that really squares with our mission, where we want to be purchasing fruit from farmers and Nigerian farmers and sort of being their guaranteed market access and the like. So that's a big problem. And the other one I would say is the macroeconomic conditions of Nigeria. Nigeria is a highly volatile market. There's nothing like macroeconomic stability. There's boom and bust years. There's high oil price years and low oil price years. And that really affects, obviously, the flow of capital into the country, but also affects your investment decisions. So as an entrepreneur, if I have a very good year and I see prices stable, I might want to invest in a factory, for instance. But if all of a sudden the Naira depreciates or something happens and I can't afford to import my inputs, then it's cheaper to import product versus, produce the product locally. And all of a sudden that investment in your factory becomes written off because you can't compete against imports. So all those things really make it a challenging environment to know how to actually allocate capital. That's if you're lucky enough to get it, right? But it's really challenging to grow. I faced about 4 currency devaluations, and I'm talking 100% devaluation since I moved back to Nigeria 11 years ago.
Oh.
We faced so many challenges, even right up to the political risk we experienced in the first quarter of 2023. So it is a very volatile market, and that makes it hard for people, even investors, to come in, but also makes it hard for you as an entrepreneur to know how much to invest and how deeply to sort of spread your tentacles or deepen your roots in Nigeria. But I have taken the long game, for better or worse, right? I can't say it's been the smartest financial decision, but in terms of the long game and betting on Nigeria, I think I've taken the approach that it's not a short-term reward kind of environment, and you have to be very committed to the long game. So that's kind of what keeps me going. But certainly a very, very challenging journey, and one that is fraught with a lot of risk.
Thank you for sharing that. An interesting point that you touched upon was the challenge of gathering accurate data and getting raw material from farmers at a reasonable price. So this requires a close relationship with the farming community. What has been the challenge of forming relationships with farmers and investing in farms to support and strengthen your fruit value chain?
Yeah, that's been a huge challenge. I mean, farming is not something that garners a lot of private investment, right? So we do a lot of like farmer intervention training and the like through donor capital, because we're fortunate enough to be able to raise some. And at the same time, what farmers want the most is a reliable market, because they face a lot of risk too, but they need to know that they can sell off their products at a kind of fair price to a reliable buyer every season. And that's actually what we're trying to be for them, promise that while we work with them to improve their productivity, improve their yields and the quality of their output, we will be that buyer and that steady kind of hand to de-risk whatever investments they'll have to make. But yeah, it's very difficult to get buy-in from farmers, not because they're difficult, but because they are even more prone to like systemic shocks and risks, from climate to, price, global geopolitical challenges, to all sorts. So they also kind of deal in season to season, but we've been trying, like I mentioned, been working with farmers for years and years and trying to kind of build that level of trust so that we become the preferred partner to them. And that's kind of how we see ourselves. But it's a very difficult endeavor. But I believe in sort of the market system that if we grow, and as we grow, we stand a better chance of bringing about the change to farmers through very fair commercial relationships where we're buying product from them and they're therefore incentivized to improve the product and grow more to meet our needs.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that you do a lot of work educating and training the farmers in modern farming techniques. Can you tell us about some of the work that you do in this area and what value you believe it adds?
Yeah, so we do a lot of training on good agricultural practices, but more importantly, we're in the tree. Most of our popular products are tree crops. So tree crops are unique in that they take 5 years to grow for first harvest, but they are productive over a 20, 30-year lifespan. But the problem is that, what you put in is what you get out. And a lot of times we are seeing farms with very low productivity, poor farming techniques, not applying the right kind of inputs, or even early harvesting, or, wrong chemical applications. and just a whole host of problems like that. So what we've been able to do, or what we decided to start doing, is really look for the lowest hanging fruit. Most farms in Nigeria, at least tree crops, a lot are past productive age years, but it doesn't mean that they still can't produce. So what we try to do is design systems or design trainings and interventions that kind of lower the impact or investment impact on the farmer, but still yield high results. So for instance, if you want to increase yield, there's a number of things you can do, but one of the key things is just to harvest properly. And that doesn't cost the farmer too much. It costs them more in time and being delicate, but they can see a huge improvement in their yield. So we focus on things like that, like where can we get what low-hanging fruit, excuse the pun, gives us kind of the highest return of impact and also is not too expensive for the farmer to adopt, etc. So we're very practical about things like that. We also know that farmers cannot make a lot of financial investments in farms till the farms are profitable, and a lot of farms are not. So we don't just like say, oh, you need to do all these things. We understand that it does take a process, and not just that. Only things that farmers can repeatedly do is what will be sustainable. So there's no point in kind of being overbearing about what needs to be done, rather just take it a bit at a time.
I liked what you said with regards to what you put in is what you get out. So if we look at what you get out, how does ReelFruit ensure that the fruits it sources are of a high quality and meet the company's standards for processing?
Yes, so this is a very, very high touch engagement for us. We have extension agents in the region. So we actually start visiting the farms very close to when harvest time is. In fact, we visit farms like almost a month or so before harvest to start estimating what harvest will look like.
Okay.
And while we get closer to harvest, our extension agents go to do sugar testing on the farm to make sure that there's no like pest infestations. And then even on farm harvest days, our extension agents are there to facilitate and guide so that the products are harvested properly. Otherwise, you may see, get stock that half of it is bruised and doesn't work, or it's too ripe or unripe, etc. So it's a huge high touch investment from our end. But you see, we need to do that if we want to compete. So we definitely take that extra step and the extra mile to ensure that we get quality.
Awesome. So you detailed the support work that your extension agents do with regards to quality and the quantity of products. So if we look at it from a different perspective in terms of sustainability, what is the importance of sustainability in ReelFruit operations, and how does a company work towards reducing the environmental footprint within the farms that you operate in?
I think that we price productivity first. So for us, it's more important that his farms are up to par with the global standard. Most farmers in Nigeria are not using fertilizers. Most farmers are manually irrigated, if at all. So I don't even see economic or carbon footprint as a big threat or where we're complicit in that nature. However, tree crops by nature do support reforestation and carbon sequestration and things like that. So actually encouraging healthier and more farming of tree crops really does help, with the carbon footprint. And we want our farmers to be a lot more productive, and knowledge is actually power in this sense. So where they are applying the right amount of fertilizers or right amount of chemicals if they need to, it's much, much better for the environment than them like using judgment or, not being precise in that, because they would be taking the wrong decision and that ends up harming both their farm and the environment. But I think as we do technical knowledge transfer to the farmers through just supporting them and guiding them, we're kind of indirectly supporting our farmers to take better decisions that support the environment.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Earlier on, you touched on the challenges or the, process that you went about setting up a factory. So the fruits that are grown are processed in a factory that you built and own. Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges of building the factory in terms of finding the right machinery, quality standards, control, financing? What was the process and how did you go about doing it?
Yeah, this process was over a number of years. I will start with funding. It took us about 5 years to close on our funding from when I first met our investors for a whole host of reasons. But what really helped us was that in the time we were building a really good relationship with them, and we were also showing them that we could grow. And in all of that time too, I always knew I wanted to build a factory. In fact, it was my dream from day one. So it took 10 years to realize it's kind of, if you had told me that on day one, I would have probably never come to start this business, because I thought I would get a factory in no time. But what the time does allow us to do is measure twice or three times and cut once. And that was something I didn't take for granted. When people ask me, what are some of your biggest advantages in this business? It's that I have tried as much as possible and very successfully to use other people's mistakes to avoid making my own, or to propel myself with the knowledge of others. So when we were looking at building a factory, actually, we bought a property and repurposed it for our factory. I had spoken to so many factory owners. I had spoken to so many companies, our relationship with so many dried fruit companies across Africa, to find out what the best machines were, who should make them, who should commission them, what size, what scale, what energy source. I mean, I spent, I want to say, maybe the equivalent of like 6 months consecutively, just knowledge gathering over the course of 5 to 6 years. So that really helped me, because I know that resources are scarce in Nigeria, and in manufacturing, you don't get too many opportunities to make mistakes. If you buy a machine, you can't send it back. Once it's installed, if it's too big a capacity, your unit costs go up forever. If it's too small, or at least it goes up till you're able to build up to that capacity. If your capacity is too small, you've tied down money and you realize you need to raise more money to scale up. So there's so much and of course, these are high ticket items. It's not like you're buying like 2 cars, and if they don't work this way, you can move them that way. I was buying specialized dried fruit machines that I couldn't sell to anybody because nobody else is doing dried fruit at this scale in Nigeria. So I had to be very exact. And I think knowledge gathering, learning, and really making sure I validated every big decision I had to take by making sure that I talked to the right people has been a huge challenge, but also one of my biggest advantages. And of course, raising money, which is why I also was very careful, because I knew that it was so tough to raise money. So getting the right skills, knowledge, etc., was a big challenge, but we overcame that. And also, we've had some good fortune along the way, especially with our factory, our use of gas as an energy source, which was available to us by virtue of the factory we bought. So we're not using diesel, we're using cheaper, cleaner energy. And even some of the headwinds or tailwinds, whichever way you look at them, that have come from the market maturing and more people consuming our product, and formal retail's exploding across Nigeria, which is where we sell our products. We're sold in over 1,000 stores in Nigeria.
Wow.
So all those things have also helped us along the way. But sometimes I don't regret that it's taken this long, because I believe that the time we've used very wisely to not only build a market, to size up the right factory for scale, and to build the foundations of our value chain that will just enable and continue to propel us as we scale into the future. So I think our foundation is solid, and I'm really proud of that. And I can't wait to see what we build on top of this foundation that we've sort of been working on for the first 10 years.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Affiong. So you detailed that financing was a huge challenge when building the factory. Finances and the economic environment in Nigeria is currently quite challenging. Companies are having to navigate a lot of different elements, from the new naira, devaluation of the currency, and inflation. How has this impacted the work that you're doing?
I think, if anything, it's probably slowed us down. The impact of all the challenges in Nigeria have just meant that it's taken us a lot longer to achieve the milestones that we have. If we had money, if we had more stability on the macro front, we would probably have grown faster, we would have demonstrated more traction, and there would have been more broad-based growth, right? So I think those things really impact the business in terms of the pace at which we can grow. And, of course, you can't grow bigger than your market. So where there is devaluation and inflation and people effectively get poorer, the consumption of your product goes down and then you can't grow as quickly as you'd like. So to that effect, one of the great things about our expansion and with our factories is that it's going to allow us to even access new markets. So we will be selling and hoping to export our products across the world so that, we can move made in Nigeria across the globe, but also we can hedge the Nigerian market and all the sort of instability that's associated with it.
Interesting. So you mentioned the macro factors impact the pace that you can grow and also have an impact on the wider community. So with this in mind, how does ReelFruit ensure that its products are still accessible and affordable to consumers whilst, I guess, keeping the high quality standards that you do have?
That's a very tough balance to strike. I mean,
yes,
we try as much as possible to improve, becoming more as efficient as possible in our production. Reduce waste where possible, be more energy efficient and things like that. And we're getting better at that. So that means that we don't have to increase our prices as much. We've localized a lot of our inputs, so we don't import a lot of our raw materials. So that means like the shocks of foreign exchange risks and things like that don't affect us as much as they used to. So we are trying to sort of build this end-to-end kind of business that is as domesticated and localized as possible, where we have a lot of control across our value chain so that we're able to actually control our costs better and continue to stabilize in terms of our raw material sourcing, our inputs and the like, which can then help us keep prices relatively stable. Although we have had to increase our prices in the past, we try as much as possible to first focus on being as efficient as possible.
Fantastic. So you mentioned earlier, as a result of your high quality standards, you've been able to successfully export your products to US, Europe, and other new markets. So from your perspective, how much opportunity is there to sell made in Nigeria products globally?
That's a great question. I think it depends on your sector. I do think depending on how the next government, the kind of industrial and economic policies they put on ground, Nigeria could turn around from being an import-dependent country to exporting. And I don't mean that across the board, but I think like in terms of manufacturing, exporting of food products in certain categories. I mean, you've seen it with our music culture and things like that. I think it can now move to more services and goods across different sectors of the economy because the Naira is weak. So Nigeria now becomes more attractive to import. And also, more importantly, Nigerians have built bridges across different countries. So the skills and expertise needed to really build competitive manufacturing, I think Nigeria can access. And also the big domestic market also relatively helps to kind of stabilize and offer you a local market so that you can also build for an international market. So I do see that. I mean, I don't pretend to be an expert, but I do think that it's a goal that the government should aim to achieve in a real way, meaning that the policies that enable that goal should really be what they focus on and push, because Nigeria can create products and scale up, especially in the agricultural space, to really feed the world. And with changes in demographics from aging populations, Nigeria still being youthful, inflation in other countries, etc., and even increasing incomes in China and Asia, we could take some of those manufacturing jobs and localize them for the world. So I do think it requires a strong message and signaling and a cohesive, interrelated policies from the government. But I would really welcome that kind of approach. And of course, as being the true Nigerian I am, I don't wait for the government to show me the way. I'm hoping that my company will be an example of what can be done with very little support, so that if governments actually decide to support this kind of local to global movement, we can see it really, really thrive.
I agree. So keeping on the export theme, have you had to make any changes to your products or operations to enable you to export successfully to international markets?
Yes and no. So for some of our markets, we have had to change some of our labeling and packaging. Like when we first exported to Kuwait, we had to translate our entire packaging to Arabic and put like Arabic labels, which was very new. We had to obviously get some extra certifications for that market. But what has been most pleasing to me is that all in all, there's nobody anywhere in the world that has tasted our products and didn't think it was world class.
Yes.
So that was for me one of the biggest things. Like nobody thought, oh, this is good for an African product. Everybody has said, even in the US, the biggest market with the biggest, options and, supply of snacks from everywhere in the world, our products stand out for its quality and its taste and how good they're made. So that for me has been the biggest validation, that we don't actually need to change the core of what we do. Anything we may need to change would be, superficial, like packaging. We've been told we may need to upgrade some of our packaging to include more claims about like our products being non-GMO, vegan, and the like. But that's just superficial. That's not to do with the product. So I am very confident that, our product is really good enough to sort of compete internationally, because the feedback we've gotten in the beginning has been really good.
Amazing. That's great to hear. So you mentioned that you've only had to make subtle changes to packaging and certification, but you've not had to make any changes to the core of the product. So I guess when looking at the core of the product and how things are run and the operations, you have a very efficient, effective, and I guess economic operation in terms of how you work within different markets. What role has technology played in terms of how you work as a company and what you've achieved so far?
I think our biggest applications of technology have definitely been around making the world a global village where we could learn. The first potential company I reached out to learn from, I found online, and I just cold called them. And I said, please, can you give me time? And it was a Ghanaian company. And the founder was so kind and said I could come over. So technology has helped us really, again, chart our path. Like I said, we're a pioneer company. We don't have any models to follow in Nigeria. So it's been a great lever for us to really go out and learn. And this is everything from what machines do we buy to how do we, make this product shelf stable. We Google, we watch YouTube, we reach out to companies across the world. I've spoken to people as far as the Philippines, with like impossible time differences to learn. So technology has brought knowledge to us. And that's been invaluable. And then from the second perspective of sales and marketing and putting our products out there, we've actually listed our products on Amazon.com. And of course, our sales were interrupted during COVID, but we plan to go back with a bang. But we've been able to own our own online store in the US right from Nigeria, not having to physically be there. We've shipped our products. We built up and leaned on the whole infrastructure right here from Nigeria to sell our products. We also have been able to get other people who have found us online to buy our products across the world. So it's really showcased us and allowed us to leapfrog in terms of learning, but also, advertise our products to a big market. And then that's where it's been very, very helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing us. You mentioned technology played a large role in the growth of the company in terms of sales and marketing. And that all ties in with your ambitious plans for the future. So looking into the future of the company or the fruit sector within Nigeria, how big do you believe this can get or grow? How big is the market?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't think I can even fathom it right now, because again, if you told me I would be selling what I'm selling today 10 years ago, I probably would have not believed it. So I'd like to think that our market is infinite. I know that sounds like, of course, no market is infinite, but in terms of the opportunities based on the foundations we've built, I think we have a lot of market. There's so many more products that we had in mind to launch. There's so many markets that we think we can approach within Africa and outside of Africa. There's so many also ancillary lines and even innovations that don't yet exist that we know we're going to bring to the market. So I think that the next 10 years for us is going to see accelerated growth. We're going to be growing in like triplicates and quadruple year on year just because of the opportunities that we have. And also the impact that's very important for us. I mean, for me as a founder, my employees keep me going and motivated. The work we're doing with farmers keeps me going and motivated. The idea that we're bucking the trend and surviving against Nigeria's happenings keep me motivated. So I look at all the good we can do, and I'm even more excited. We want to work with over 1,000 farmers, and really move them from poverty to middle income. We want to create over 1,000 direct jobs and maybe another 20, 30, 40,000 indirect jobs in the next decade or so. We want to sell our products to maybe 10, 15, 20 countries across the world and launch more products and still launch new products for the Nigerian market. So the spaces we can go, I think, are quite exciting. And the market is going to be huge for us, especially as now we're going to be hopefully going into almost in the next 10 years, generations of young Nigerians who used to kind of eat our products because their parents bought it for them to them buying it themselves. So really exciting to now start looking at in the near future, getting customers who have been consuming our products for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. I mean, the lifetime value of those customers will also be very important to us, and they will feed it to their families. So that's all part of the bright future that we see and the big market that we think is open to us.
Brilliant. So you mentioned there the opportunities are infinite and the impact that you can make will be infinite with regards to job creation and supporting farmers. So if we look at to date, what impact do you believe ReelFruit has had on Nigeria's agriculture sector?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, certainly not as much as I would like, but I think one of the biggest things I'm hoping that I've done well so far is really be an example of the type of company that can impact its entire value chain and the model and the approach to doing that. What I'd love to do, even when I mentor people, is to just help them avoid mistakes, not go down a path that I went, do something in 1 year, whereas it took me 3 years or 4 years to do it. So I hope my company is creating that example for upcoming entrepreneurs, that they can really leapfrog in the agricultural sector and really take a formulaic approach to building a sustainable business, and so they can last the test of time and grow. In terms of employment, we create over, I think, 160 probably full-time jobs right now, and I hope that number 10x's in the next 5 to 7 years. And in terms of our farmer network, we've trained over 300 farmers. And also through another program with the Dutch government, we've trained about 500 plus youth in agribusiness, and really helped them become more employable in that sector. So we see ourselves as an ecosystem player. I want the value and the impact I have across the agricultural value chain to be end to end, literally from customer to farmer. And we have achieved that to a significant degree in our own way. And the future just means we can do more of that. But of course, with a market-leaning stance that we want to be profitable, we want to be sustainable, we want to continue to see growth, because I believe if we're doing that, then we can have more social impact in our value chain. But I do think we set a good example for Nigeria. And also, hopefully, as an entrepreneur and somebody who's been at my business for 11 years, really proven that it takes time to build something great. And if you're building something good, anything worth doing is worth doing well. So it is worth it to give it the time that it will take to build it big. I'm not trying to, build a tidy, neat business. I want to build a gigantic business. And to do that, I understand that I have to build a very strong foundation. And so I hope at least that I'm creating that example that people can aim to build big and also take the time and build the grit to really see it through.
Awesome. So one of the positive things that you like to do is help budding entrepreneurs and guide them so that they avoid making mistakes that you've made in the past. So if we look at the positives, what positive trends in Nigeria's fruit processing industry are you seeing that you're currently excited about?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think I would say the opportunity to basically create more innovative products. Our products, used to be very novel and very strange 10 years ago, and now they're not. And
Yes.
Even I'm seeing what other entrepreneurs are doing in terms of innovating more and more unique fruit snacks and things like that is showing that there's a lot of potential for growth, and customers are more accepting of new products, and also building products for other uses like inputs, for instance, producing fruit snacks for the cereal industry or for granolas or for parfaits and things like that. We were really seeing more exciting complements of fruit, not just as a dried fruit or processed fruit, not just as a snack, but as an input. And also the export market. I think that's also a huge opportunity for Nigerian, processed product and processed fruit to really sell outside of the country, especially because we have a very sizable diaspora. So, getting our products to Nigerians outside the country is also an opportunity. And I'm seeing that even with our products, I find that a lot of people who enjoyed it in Nigeria and have since left are always asking for it or buying a lot of it in their suitcases when they come for holidays. So those kinds of things excite me about the potential.
Awesome. So if we look past the current trends and look at the future, how do you see the fruit processing industry in Nigeria evolving, say, in the next 5 years? And how is ReelFruit positioned to lead this change?
Yeah, I think we are playing a leading role already in terms of end-to-end sort of organization and processing and scaling of fruit snacks in Nigeria. I see the trend showing more probably large-scale processing of fruit, be it in juice or dried fruit or other kind of fruit derivatives. I see that being the case. And I also see us continuing to build competitive advantage by deepening the work we're doing, especially around sorting out the primary agricultural sector, bringing best-in-kind technology for our factory and processing, and also building markets, locally and internationally. That makes us very well-rounded and, will sort of allow us to stand the test of time. So I think in that regard, we are really poised to take advantage of the growth in the next coming years.
Brilliant. I know we've touched upon this during the conversation, but if we look closer to home, where do you see yourself and ReelFruit in 5 years' time?
Yeah, I hope that in terms of scale, we would have, grown our product range from about 9 unique products to closer to 15 to 20 in the next 5 years. That's just for the snack range. I hope that we would have been responsible for creating over 1,000 direct jobs. And I hope that we would have empowered thousands of farmers to really improve and grow high quality fruit in Nigeria that that will kind of match up with what the region is doing, meaning the West African region. So I hope that in 5 years our business will really overall see a raising of the standard in the fruit value chain in its entirety.
Thank you for that.
Quote of the week.
As people, we often have quotes, mantras, African proverbs, or affirmations that keep us going when times are challenging or when times are good. Do you have one that you can share with us today?
Yeah, I'm more of I'm not a big motivational quote person. So my quote
Brilliant.
is very, very pragmatic. And it's actually by Nelson Mandela. And it's one of his more, I would say, realistic quotes where you find that there are many more hills to climb. So Nelson Mandela says, after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb.
Brilliant.
And that has encapsulated my entrepreneurial journey in the last 11 years in Nigeria. Every time I climb a hill or, go over any challenge or problem and you grow, you just see that there's much more adversity ahead. So you do learn to embrace it. I've learned to love challenges. I've learned to be very solution oriented. I've learned to believe that there's nothing I can't overcome. And I've also kind of learned by virtue of my faith that it will all be okay in the end. So that's kind of what I do for motivation, persistence, attitude, etc.
Brilliant. That's a very fitting quote. And I guess as an entrepreneur and someone who's managed to grow a company over the last 11 years, it's definitely one to live by. So fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. As we're coming to the end of the conversation, I was hoping you can give us any closing remarks, final calls to action for people who are interested in ReelFruit or interested in Nigeria's fruit processing, fruit value chain. Yeah, any closing remarks?
I really encourage, of course, your listeners, people who are interested in business on the continent, to reach out to entrepreneurs and really, especially if they're thinking about starting businesses or moving back home to start businesses. Because I do think that I'm sure there are a lot of people who are listening and thinking, okay, is it time to sort of jump ship? And could I invest in coming back home? One thing I will leave with people is that the work you do here, building enterprise and building businesses, is very palpable and very impactful. And so if there are any people wondering, what should I be doing with my one great life? And you're considering coming back to Nigeria, I don't think you should dismiss it or discard it. I think that if you plan and you speak to enough people and you're ready to sort of put in the time and energy, you'll probably find it a very, very rewarding endeavor. So I really just encourage people to reflect on that. And, if any of you are thinking about it, this is your nudge to keep taking it forward.
Brilliant. That is a great note to end on. So, Affiong, it's been a great conversation. It's clear that you're doing amazing work, much needed innovation work in Nigeria's agriculture and food processing industry. You're a shining light and example for other entrepreneurs on the continent and also outside the continent. So it's been amazing having you on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Keep up the great work and we will speak soon.
Okay, great.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you to everyone who has listened and stayed tuned to the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share, or tell a friend about it. You can also rate, review us in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcast. Thank you and see you next week for the Unlocking Africa podcast.